Moto's E series is back in its 5th generation, promising high value and performance that shows little compromise. The entry-level Moto E5 Play sells for around $70 with prepaid service, but can be had for free if you transfer your number to Cricket. The slightly more capable Moto E5 Plus can be purchased for as little as $180. But can these two phones manage to impress with anything else beyond their pricing?
The Moto E5 Play looks and feels like a typical low-cost, entry-level phone with a removable back made of textured plastic and a display surrounded by prominent bezels. Its looks are far from awe-inspiring, but the curved sides and corners make the handset feel good in the hand. The E5 Plus, however, borrows a few trendy traits that make it a cooler-looking device, including a glass back and a taller 18:9 display with slimmed-down bezels. It is a bit on the heavy side though, while the glass back, although pleasant to look at, is more prone to scratching. Both the E5 Play and E5 Plus sport the poker chip-like protrusion which encircles their optics, and both have solid feels to the power and volume buttons. Fingerprint scanners have been moved to the rear in both, and while nano coating offers some water repellence, it certainly doesn't make either phone submersible in water. The displays on these phones won't be the most impressive you've seen. At 5.2 inches and 6 inches respectively, the E5 Play produces 282 pixels per inch with HD resolution, while the E5 Plus only makes 268 pixels per inch with an HD Plus resolution of 720 by 1440. In other words, it won't be hard to see pixelization on either of these devices, though the Plus's screen does appear more vivid. Nevertheless, these screens get the job done in most lighting situations. Able to exceed 550 nits, the E5 Plus won't give you any trouble in direct sunlight, but the E5 Play on the other hand does noticeably worse, only able to reach 390 nits. In terms of color reproduction, both displays portray decent color with a slight tendency to tint blue. Interestingly, we found the colors on the E5 Play to be slightly less prone to this tinting, albeit less vibrant and dynamic overall. In typical Moto fashion, the Moto E5 Play and E5 Plus run a clean, bloat-free version of Android 8.0. Iconography, menus, and general interface aesthetics don't differ much from what you'd find on an Android One handset, which can be helpful for keeping things light and nimble, while also generally looking cohesive and familiar. These minimal changes also shouldn't hurt when Android updates come along, but unfortunately that doesn't guarantee anything either. The lone additional app within this experience goes by the name Moto. This app has expanded to include a performance boosting tab with tools for space and battery saving, alongside the typical Moto Actions and Moto Display, which have remained the same in terms of their feature set. Last year we saw the introduction of Moto Display's more interactive lock screen features, which allow users to see and do more. This, and features found in Moto Actions like gestures to launch the flashlight with 2 quick chops, or the camera with 2 shakes of the wrist, are still quite useful. The Moto E5 Play comes with 2 gigs of RAM, 16GB storage, and Qualcomm Snapdragon 425 chip, while the E5 Plus notches that up by adding 1 more gig of RAM, doubling storage capacity, and opting for the SD435 instead. Both are expandable via microSD cards, up to an additional 128 gigs, which is good since the 16GB E5 Play only has about 8 gigs available. These chips are generally meant for lighter workloads, and pushing the 720p graphics on this lightweight Android interface proves that the right combination of software and hardware can deliver speed and fluidity in most any task. Will gaming be the best experience on these phones? Certainly not, and not all movement through the OS will be buttery smooth either, but you won't run into much hanging or lag on either handset throughout your regular use. Both devices have dual-band Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.0, and 4G LTE capability, but no wireless charging and no NFC for mobile payments. It is common for entry-level phones to omit the last two, but competitors like the Nokia 6.1 do have NFC. In the camera department, you'll encounter 2 fairly different setups. On the E5 Plus, you'll find a 12-megapixel snapper with phase detection autofocus, laser autofocus, and an LED flash. The E5 Play is a bit more basic with its bare-bones 8-megapixel sensor and LED flash. Images shot on these phones are pretty distinctive as well. As far as image quality goes, the E5 Plus and E5 Play have about the same adeptness in dynamic scenes. Shots will be for the most part passable, but with both there's a tendency for highlights to come out overblown. You'll find better contrast and more saturated colors on the E5 Plus's photos, as well as better detail capture, but overall, both phones capture usable photos when used in favorable conditions. Generally, you'll also notice more grain and low-light photos taken on the E5 Play versus the E5 Plus. In front, the E5 Play sports a 5-megapixel front-facing camera with flash, while the E5 Plus opts for 8 megapixels also with flash. Selfies taken on these two cameras will be similarly mediocre, but the E5 Play actually seems to capture better detail and less blur than the E5 Plus, though the Play shows clearer struggles with exposure than the Plus does. Video recording tops out at 1080p resolution on both devices. Generally speaking, both of these devices record video with mostly accurate, albeit a bit anemic color reproduction and average detail quality. Just like with photography, video capture struggles a bit with exposure, which appears to also be a contributing factor to the somewhat lackluster colors. The E5 Plus does have software-based stabilization though, something we sorely missed on the E5 Play. The Play also recorded very digitized sounding audio. In fact, More than once we had instances where audio recordings cut in and out and sounded extremely compressed. Hopefully this isn't the case on all Moto E5 Play units though, as such instances completely ruin the recordings. Call quality on the handsets is pretty good. We had no glaring issues with signal or reception, but the earpiece, which doubles as a speakerphone, could certainly use a few more decibels of output, in both regular and speakerphone calls. This dual-purpose earpiece also translated to a rather poor, low-decibel audio experience when consuming media. Both devices, however, turned in formidable results in battery life. The E5 Play's 2800 mAh battery gave us a very amenable 8-hour time in our custom battery drain test, but the E5 Plus is the real champ here, lasting over 15 hours with its enormous 5000 mAh battery. Even with the Plus's turbo power adapter, charging this monster still takes just over 5 hours, while the E5 Play charges up in just over 2.
So the final question, where do these phones land? Well, first let's talk about the E5 Play. The E5 Play retails for around $70 on Verizon Wireless and Boost Mobile, while Cricket subscribers can even get the phone for free. This puts the E5 Play in a rather non-competitive space, as most other $70 phones will be much more frustrating to deal with than the E5 Play in most ways. Still, the problematic audio recording in videos gives us much justifiable pause. As for the E5 Plus, it's a bit of a tougher sell. Priced at $180 on Cricket and $288 on Sprint, you have alternatives like the 6 and the 6.1 from Nokia, and even Moto's own G6. All of these offer similarly clean Android experiences, better looks, and potentially better cameras. And of course, there's the still formidable iPhone SE, which costs less and performs better than the E5 Plus in most categories. That is, of course, if OS and size are of no matter to you. The only undisputable reason we can see for buying the E5 Plus may just be the battery. I'm Corey Gaskin with PhoneArena. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out PhoneArena.com for more info on all of these devices.